It is Monday, October 6th, and Democrat sanctuary states continue to block Trump's National Guard deployments. First, Gavin Newsom in California did this by filing a lawsuit with a radical district court judge. Then Oregon's governor did it last week, and now this morning, Illinois Governor Pritzker does it again, filing a lawsuit to block Trump's deployment. This is a strategy, folks. They are ordering their local law enforcement to stand down, not help federal agents. The president attempting to now circumvent this by deploying the Texas National Guard to Chicago, Illinois. And you know his strategy's working because Democrat leaders freaking out this morning, calling this civil war, that the president just started a civil war.
We start with breaking news and the extraordinary power struggle playing out among the president, states, and the courts. Illinois just sued the Trump administration to prevent the deployment of Texas National Guard troops to the city of Chicago, a move Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker labeled a, quote, Trump invasion.
Yesterday, President Trump ordered up the Illinois National Guard to deploy to Chicago and help secure these federal ICE detention facilities. Why is he doing that? Because ICE says domestic terrorists are attacking them all day, every day. ICE releasing this press release on Saturday, for example. This morning, Border Patrol law enforcement officers were ambushed by domestic terrorists that rammed their vehicles, federal agents inside their vehicles, one of them armed with a semi-automatic weapon. That was a DHS press release, a Department of Homeland Security press release on Saturday, 2 days ago. Let me know if you think that sounds like domestic terrorism or at least civil terrorism. These Antifa activists following federal officers, ramming their vehicles into them, cornering them, and then more of these Antifa people descending onto them, throwing things at them, stopping them from doing their job. That's what their goal is. That sounds like domestic terror or at least civil terrorism. In yesterday's broadcast, we played the 911 dispatch recording where that Border Patrol agent radioed in for Chicago PD to provide him backup because he was in danger. Uniformed federal officers in danger, and the Chicago PD ignoring them. They were told to stand down. Yesterday, Illinois Governor Pritzker questioned about this, claiming no knowledge of the incident. Well, this morning, the chief of police was questioned. Watch how he answered this. Play this.
C7. Good afternoon, Superintendent. At any time, maybe you can clear this up too, at any time on Saturday were CPD officers told by dispatchers to stand down?
Well, I don't know about them being told by dispatchers. There was some communication between boots on the ground, a supervisor, and the chief of patrol. So there was some communication by phone. There was something that was put out there that there was an internal message that came from the chief of patrol. That is absolutely not true. There is no internal message. There was a phone conversation. I'm not sure until we get to our after action, all of the exact language that was there. But I have had a conversation with the chief of patrol who was concerned about officers showing up on the scene. The chief of patrol at that time had no information that anyone was in danger. And let me just be clear about one other thing when it comes to these federal agents. These federal agents can handle themselves. All right, we've been out there and we've seen it.
Let me know what you think about that. Does it sound like he's excited to help out these federal officers? No, it does not. He said they can take care of themselves. Pretty despicable. If one of his officers was in danger, I'm sure he'd want help from a federal agent if they were there to assist. So this is why. This is the reason Trump's deploying the National Guard, trying to deploy the National Guard, because so far he's been unsuccessful in these states because Border Patrol needs help and local law enforcement isn't giving it. Now, under the U.S. system, the National Guard acts in a dual state and federal role. They can be called into active deployments for emergency situations that could range from natural disasters like hurricanes, wildfires, civil unrest, riots, or homeland defense needs. There's multiple different deployment authorities from which the Guard can be called into service, such as state active duty deployments, than Title 32 deployments or Title 10 deployments, which is what President Trump is trying to do. Democrats screaming that Trump's breaking the law, filing lawsuits claiming he doesn't have the authority. Is that true? Let's take a look. Grok says Title 10 deployment. Who activates a Title 10 deployment? The president, Congress, or the SecDef can federalize units, sometimes with governor consent, but not always required in emergencies. Circumstances for a Title 10 deployment for federal or international missions such as overseas military ops, national emergencies, invasions, insurrections, or when state governments cannot enforce federal laws. That sounds a lot like what's happening right now. This morning, Illinois Governor Pritzker filing a lawsuit to block Trump's deployment of his state's National Guard. Oregon, like we said a few minutes ago, did the same thing last week, and they were successful. That district court judge successfully granted a restraining order blocking Trump from deploying them. California also successful in their effort. So what we have here are these sanctuary state governors using these radical district court judges to try to stop DHS from removing the illegals in their states. This morning, for the first time, Trump's now attempting to circumvent this. Instead of waiting for it to go to the Supreme Court, which could take months, Trump's decided to deploy the Texas National Guard to Chicago to help with security at these ICE detention facilities. Governor Abbott of Texas says he fully authorizes the use of his state's National Guard. Democrats now calling this civil war.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
I know you're going to talk about the Texas Guard, Illinois Guard, but can you give us a little bit about what your next steps could be to fight that?
Well, look, our corporate counsel has been in constant communication with our Attorney General for several months now. And I just wanted to offer this up. A couple of years ago, I said very candidly that the right wing in this country wants a rematch of the Civil War. I want that to sit in right now, because the President of the United States of America has declared war on the people of Chicago and people across America.
That's right.
He's more interested in giving billions of dollars to other nations, while farmers in urban cities around this country are literally being destabilized. And so whether it's the legal system, whether it's through executive order, or whether it's through the brave women and men who are serving as rapid responders. We literally have people who are volunteering in this city, on the southwest side, the northwest side, all over this city, to make sure that we're protecting children from being separated from their families. And we're talking about volunteers who are literally putting themselves at risk of being shot and killed by the federal government. And so whether it's the legal system, whether it's our continuous struggle for liberation through organizing, and whether it's through executive action, or whether it's through law, it would be nice if we actually had lawmakers in Washington that would actually hold this president accountable. And if they won't do it, then the city of Chicago will, using every single tool that's available to us.
Gavin Newsom posting on X this morning, states cannot invade one another. This is so simple, so fundamental to America. I cannot believe I have to type those words. America is on the brink of martial law, he says. And you know Trump's winning. Whenever Democrats begin hyperbolizing, all of this appearing more and more like a strategy, though. During the presidential campaign last year in November, and before that, Democrats kept saying all campaign long that Trump would deploy the military onto American streets. It's almost as if this is scripted, as if they knew he'd do that because they had planned to overwhelm ICE with these Antifa terrorists, forcing Trump's hand. Now he is. Either it's all scripted or it's going exactly as they planned. Let me know what you think. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, great congresswoman. She chairs the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. She went on the Danny Jones podcast this weekend and explained where these left-wing groups like Antifa and the Salt Lake City Queer Group are getting their money from. Who exactly is funding these groups? Well, check this out. She claims it's not just these American left-wing billionaires, but there's a foreign state nexus to this. Watch what she said.
There's been a lot of questions as to whether there was foreign government involvement.
In which one?
In the assassination of Charlie Kirk, right?
Okay.
So like we're going to address these theories right now. Back during the ICE riots, do you remember all of that at the beginning of the year?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were like, where are all of a sudden these big violent riots coming from? Who's funding these organizations? We found out that there was a foreign funding tied to an individual by the name of Neville Singham, who's a multi-billionaire. And he made his billions by working with the communist Chinese government. And he would take, and he's not a registered agent, a foreign agent, which is a FARA violation. So he's taking these millions, funneling it into organizations like the Party of Socialism and Liberation, who then in turn create these very radicalized movements, but they're not even American in theory or funded by American people. They're actually funded by foreign governments. The irony in all this is that Neville Singham, not just to Mamdani's election, so like Jews from Mamdani, but he actually also has ties to funding the Party of Socialism, the Salt Lake City Queer Group, which is now being investigated with former knowledge on whether or not they knew Charlie would be assassinated, who had ties to the shooter. So I do think that there's a foreign funding tie, but the question is which government, and I think it's tied to the Chinese.
Interesting.
I mean,
what was
like
it called? The queer what?
Salt Lake City Queers.
Salt Lake City Queers.
They're being investigated by the FBI. But if you look at the organization and where the funding comes from, I mean, not just them, they had ties to groups in Cuba and they are actually calling themselves terrorists. But not just that, they also have ties to the United Nations. So there's this aspect of a very pro-globalist and then a pro-Marxist movement to really sow discord and divide in this country. And that's why I recently posted on my social media, I was like, check out the bot farms that actually exist. And when you see all this shit talking on Twitter, make sure you're not arguing with the bot, because that's not like a fake thing. It happens. And so we have to realize that social media is being used to kind of stoke this divide. But in the instance of the shooter, Charlie Kirk was almost like a son to President Trump. Don Jr. will tell you was like his little brother.
Right.
Very close to J.D. Vance, very close to Kash Patel. So if you think for a second that there will be any amount of resource spared in his investigation, you're wrong. Because I know these people and I've seen the way that this administration has worked towards at least issuing some of the darkest secrets. For example, what happened with CIA and the connection to JFK's assassination. I've met with the director, but to, I think, really take into account that you have the family that is seeing all this stuff out there right now. I hope that they get every single person involved. I definitely think that it's likely that more than one person knew about what was happening, because the Salt Lake City Queer Group immediately deleted their page. They're under investigation. There's a foreign funding tie there. For Tyler Robinson to say that Charlie was, hateful and that he just wanted to eliminate his hatefulness, where does that come from, right? Like if you actually listen to the things that Charlie was saying and you don't clip it, you can realize it was a very logical conversation that he was trying to have. If you don't agree with it, it's still not a reason to murder someone.
This is interesting because yesterday the president explained how these sanctuary state governors and politicians, he believes, are being forced to do this, that he believes that they're scared for their lives. Watch.
Over the place, it's Antifa. And yet the politicians who are petrified. Look, the politicians are afraid for their lives. That's the only reason that they say, like, there's nothing happening. And you've seen it. The place is burning down and they pretend like there's nothing happening. So we'll take a look at the order. We haven't seen the order yet.
And from what we understand, he's not referring to being scared of Antifa. He's not saying Pritzker's scared of Antifa, but that he's scared of these special interest groups behind Antifa. The groups who Anna Paulina Luna is now claiming are tied back to the Chinese Communist Party. Pretty remarkable. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.